I think we can get started. I know some folks are still trickling in, but we are recording this webinar in case you do miss the beginning part of it. So welcome everyone to the second webinar in our industry expert series. My name is Madhusha Senthil. I am here on behalf of AudienceView, and thank you for joining us on Staying Relevant and Growing Revenue, Embracing the Subscription Economy with our industry expert, Aubrey Bergauer. So I know a lot of you already know who Aubrey is. I probably don't need to do an introduction, but just for those who don't, Aubrey is often hailed as the Steve Jobs of classical music and is known for her customer-centric, data-obsessed pursuit of changing the narrative for the arts. A dynamic administrator with an unquenchable drive for canny innovation, she's held offstage roles at major institutions and as chief executive of the California Symphony. Bergauer's ability to cast and communicate vision inspires and unifies, earning her a reputation for coming up with great ideas and then realizing them. Her work and leadership has been covered in national publications and is a frequent speaker inside and outside the arts. Welcome, Aubrey.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Madhusha.
It's great to have you. I know that Thursdays are one of those days where everyone is just over the week at this point, but I'm so glad that you and everyone else is able to join us here today.
The pleasure is mine. Hopefully we feel a little energized by the end. Hopefully, if we've done our jobs well.
Yeah, energized, inspired, taking a lot away. I'm sure we will, because just in the brief conversations that we have had prior to this webinar, I was already telling my coworkers about like all these cool ideas that we should probably, start implementing and testing out. But to get started, so I don't start rambling, when it comes to subscription economies, I don't think any of us are strangers to that. At this point, we all have some sort of subscription in our lives, whether it's Netflix, HBO Max, Spotify, LinkedIn Premium, another one, or even a meal kit subscription, which I do have coming in today for me. The live event space is no different. And 2019, actually, 24% of AudienceView clients offered ticketed packages to their patrons. And today, we're actually seeing that number has doubled. And AudienceView professional clients have nearly tripled the number of package ticket sales. That being said, that's not necessarily an industry trend, and it's something that, Aubrey, you have researched and talked a little about in your upcoming book, which we're all among the first to hear about. Can you tell us a little more about this trend and some of the challenges organizations are facing? Why do subscriptions work elsewhere but not in the arts?
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I'm going to take a step back, and Madhusha, you did a great job of giving some overview. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on that overview and then get into, why are the arts doing subscriptions differently? But first, the overview. So as Madhusha mentioned, the subscription economy is prolific. When she makes a statement like, we probably all know what that means, there's a reason for that. That reason is because the subscription membership economy, these words are synonymous, membership economy, subscription economy, affect pretty much all of us. How do I know this? Because the stat is that of all credit card transactions, so like $41 trillion globally or something in credit card transactions in a given year, 20% of those transactions are subscriptions. 20% of all global transactions are subscriptions. And that is exactly these brands that Madhusha mentioned, Netflix, Spotify, HBO Max, all those kind of things. So first thing I want to do, use the chat if you would, everybody. And like, what else? What are subscription products or brands that you use in your life? I'm just curious. I will say my toothbrush. I get my toothbrush, comes to the door, get the refills, so no wrong answers is what I'm trying to say, but what else? What else is on subscription for you? I want to hear from folks here. I see, yes, Spotify. Pet food, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Shampoo and conditioner, not LOL. I totally did that too. Oh, chat's disabled. Okay, so we're using Q&A. Got it. Toilet paper. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I like this. Okay, Good, good, good. Yes, these are great answers. I love it. Thank you guys. Okay. Smile Direct, good. Okay. So maybe chat's open now, as this looks like the gym. Workouts, yes, big category for subscriptions. Cat food, cat litter, fantastic. Books, laundry detergent strips, news, lawn care. Oh my gosh, this is excellent. Computer software, phone apps, medicines, prescriptions, streaming services, bottled water, yes. Toddler toys, vitamins. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is even more categories than I would have even thought. Diapers, yeah, that seems like a godsend to just come to your door. Pet insurance, yeah. School lunch money, yes, interesting. Oh my gosh, these are great. Thank you all for jumping in on this. Donations, oh my gosh, you're 2 steps ahead of me, Margaret. Oh my God. Our traditional 4 series, okay, now we're bringing it back to our organizations, I see. Okay, good. Yeah, okay, you all are awesome. The point is subscriptions, memberships are prolific. As we've just demonstrated, it is such a part of our lives and part of everybody's life, pretty much. Okay, so that's some of the overview here. Now, to start bringing it to the arts, I was so impressed with the AudienceView data, I have to say, because this AudienceView data is really bucking the larger trend that's happening. So whether you are one of those organizations that is seeing an increase in subscriptions, like many of the AudienceView clients, that's awesome. Or if you're not, you're at the other end of the spectrum and you're like, well, geez, our subscriptions are kind of not going the direction we want. That is actually the broader trend. So you're not alone, and that's really the point of why we're here today. So to put some numbers behind it, nationally for the arts, first year membership subscription renewals are at around 50%. And the overall, so we're going to talk about that more in a moment, but the overall subscriber base is declining. That's been a national trend for years. This is pre-pandemic. It definitely obviously was exacerbated by the pandemic, and now here we are trying to build back again. But the point is the trend started long before COVID. And I could even say for orchestras in particular, the year that single ticket revenue surpassed subscription revenue was 2014. So other disciplines, artistic disciplines, are somewhat similar to that. And I'm going to stick to a lot of the classical data because that's the wheelhouse I know more and have those stats more at the ready. But the idea is that other disciplines have experienced something somewhat similar, true for visual arts too, a decline in memberships as a general statement. So why, and here we start getting into the crux of things, why did we just have a chat blowing up with the way subscriptions are permeating our lives? Why is 20% of our credit card expenses going to all of our recurring subscription payments? And yet in the arts, the broad trend is not that. The broad trend is decline in subscriptions. Why? Okay, so here we go. Methuselah mentioned this. There are 3 big reasons that I have found as I really dug into this. As she mentioned, I've got a book coming out. We'll talk more about that later, but that means I went deep in the rabbit hole trying to learn everything I could about this so I could write about it. And what I found is that there are 3 big areas, 3 big reasons why we differ. So I'm going to give the overview and then we can do, Methuselah and I can jump back into some conversation about it. So reason number 1, why subscriptions are thriving everywhere else, but not so much in the arts. Reason number 1 is the first year cliff. That's what I've called it, the first year cliff. And I already mentioned this. That is that stat that around half of all new subscribers don't renew. They go away. Okay, that's a pretty big drop off. Okay, we'll come back to that. For now, reason number 2, why subscriptions are thriving in pretty much every other industry except for ours is what I call backwards renewals. Backwards renewals. Does anybody know what I mean by this? If so, drop it in the chat. As you're writing that, let me start to explain. Everybody else, what happens with your credit card? Charge you every month, or if it's an annual subscription, they charge that, right? What do we do in the arts? We Assumptive renewal. Yes, David, that is what everybody else does. And what we do in the arts, payment is automatically renewed for those. Yes, Leanne. Okay, yes, you guys totally get it. And then the arts were backwards renewals, generally speaking. Most of us opt out everybody for them and say, would you like to renew your subscription? Netflix is not giving me that option every month. I have to opt out, right? We all know this. We have to log in and opt out. Okay. Totally backwards. Same thing is true for donations too, right? Any development folks on the call, like, the kind of, I don't want to say standard practice because I feel like that justifies it, but sort of the way we've been taught, the way we've done it for so long is, will you renew your gift? So we do that for subscriptions, we do that for donations, we do that for membership-based, exhibit-based organizations as well. Backwards renewals. That's reason number 2 why subscriptions are thriving everywhere else, not so much in the arts. And the third and final reason we're going to talk about more today is behavioral repetition. So this one might feel like some new vernacular, I'm not sure. But what other membership brands do very well is help customers, consumers, repeat the same behavior. So like I said, we're going to talk more about that, and I've got examples I'll give of some other brands. But for now, in the arts, we're not great at it. So a real quick example to exemplify in the arts, what happens? Somebody comes once to our organizations, and then often from that first ticket purchase, we're trying to upsell them to a subscription, to a donation, like instead of just repeat the same behavior. So we're going to get into that, and then how does that apply to subscriptions? But for now, from everything I've learned, those are the 3 big ways that we're vastly different from all of these other brands, all of these other sectors that are thriving with subscriptions. So that's sort of the big preamble overview for how we're going to spend the rest of our time today.
Awesome, thank you. There's a lot to unpack there, and I know that you mentioned this is something that you go a lot deeper in throughout your book, but the first year cliff, I think that is particularly interesting to me. What does that mean, the first year cliff? As in, when someone is purchasing from your organization or buying a subscription or a membership even, what about that first year cliff is making it difficult for people to come back?
Yeah, great question. So I said already, as definitely true for classical music, similar stat true in other disciplines, about half of first year subscribers don't renew. Okay, so for donations, by the way, it's even bleaker. The Association of Fundraising Professionals says the stat for first year donors is that only 19% renew. Less than 1/5 of new donors nationwide are renewing their gift. Okay, so again, first year cliff. Oof, after first year, those renewals tank. Conversely, and then I'll get into some solutions. Conversely, we know from data in our field that once a subscriber renews a second year, and definitely by the time we get them for a third year, they're in. It's like the opposite. Those renewals are like 80-90% by the time they've stuck with us a couple years. And then same thing for the donors too. So this first year drop off is specific to that. It's specific to that first renewal period is what I'm trying to say. So if we get over that hurdle, those renewals get so much easier for us later on. And we know this, we see this play out, right? We know our longtime subscribers are pretty much with us, barring global pandemic shutdowns, right? Those longtime subscribers have very high renewal rates. Okay, and same thing for our longtime donors. So that first year period is so critical for us in terms of being able to secure that loyalty, recurring revenue over the long term. Okay, so what do we do about it? So to get to the answer to the question, there are 3 big solutions to this first sort of challenge of the first year cliff. Okay, solution number 1, invest more into onboarding. This is in many ways, like, I don't want to say the single best thing, but if you're only going to do one thing differently, actually, if you're only going to do one thing differently, maybe do auto renewals. But if you're going to do 2 things differently after this webinar, then maybe the second one is really think more about the onboarding experience. So let's think it through. What is onboarding for a new subscriber or new donor like for a lot of us? For a lot of arts organizations, it's, the ticket confirmation or the donor acknowledgement letter. And then what, right? I mean, like sometimes we do a couple other things, but I'm being a little dramatic here, but the point is we don't do tons for onboarding. And the research I've done on this and the experts I spoke with made it so clear, like this is the investment that needs to happen. And so really what happens in the arts is we spend a lot of time on renewals, like the first renewal mailing, the second renewal mailing, and then we send them to the phone room, and we do all these things. And instead, it's not that that stuff's bad, but given that our budgets are not just magically expanding, I am now in the camp of I would reallocate some of that to better onboarding, because all of the research of the membership and subscription economy shows that if we can just give people a better onboarding experience at the beginning of that relationship, beginning of the subscription relationship, in reality, they've had a relationship with us buying single tickets or some exposure before making that first gift or first package purchase, right? But once they make that leap to become a first-year new subscriber or new donor, the onboarding is critical, is what I'm trying to make clear. So how do we do that? More emails, roll out the welcome wagon. This parlays into the second thing. So if better onboarding is one, the second thing, and this can be part of onboarding, is reinforce the wisdom of their decision. So what does that mean? It means if somebody, a consumer, has decided to shell out some money, become a subscriber or become a new donor, we need to remind them how brilliant they are that they made that decision. This is what we want as consumers too. When I sign up for a new service, like, I don't know if we consciously think this, but we want them to remind us, like, oh yeah, that is convenient. Oh yeah, that is a good deal for me. Oh yeah, like we want to feel good about the money we've just dropped, basically. And so we can do this as arts organizations as well. And so we can make that part of onboarding. We need to remind them of the benefits. I think we don't always remind our subscribers and donors of the benefits they receive. You get free ticket exchanges. You are first in line to keep your seats if you want the same seat next year, if you're on a fixed seat package, those kind of things, right? Like all the selling points we use to make the sale, reuse those and remind them that these are the benefits they get. Okay. Reinforce the wisdom of their decision. And then last one, in terms of like, how do we address this first year cliff, is make sure they maximize their value. This is the third key in terms of helping get that first year renewal period higher in terms of the renewal rates. Okay. How do we help them maximize their value? If we're looking at Netflix, for example, Netflix knows that if we join and watch a documentary, that's great. They're happy we're watching documentaries. They know that if they can get us to a different content type, a rom-com, a true crime series, a drama, right? Something different than the documentaries, they know our stickiness is higher. We are more likely to renew. We're more likely to stick with it. Okay. So that's what we need to be trying to do in the arts as well. So there's a couple different ways to do that. One is if you're a big organization and you have lots of different product types, you can help do that. You can help a subscriber. I don't know if you can give them a big discount to come to a second product type. There's things like that you could do, but not every organization has that available to them. So another example that I am getting really excited by is thinking about what else we already offer. So maybe it's not a different product on stage. Maybe it's, if we can just do better at getting people to come to the pre-show talk or the post-show talk back or whatever these things are that we already offer, a lot of us. How do we help these subscribers come and take advantage of these other, call them products, call them offerings, but the more we can help them do to maximize the value, the better, the higher those renewal rates are going to be after that first year. And then one more on this thing of helping them maximize their value. This idea came from all the box office people. Don't hate me for what I'm about to say, because it's a little bit of work, but I like it. It's work that's worth it, I say. Okay, I talked to an expert on all of this. Her name is Robbie Kelman Baxter. She's worked with like every subscription brand anywhere basically over the last 20 years. So she really is a gold mine of information. She says, what about new subscribers, first year subscribers that miss a performance? She was like, could we have the box office call them after the performance, the following Monday, Tuesday, whatever, and say, hey, we noticed you missed a performance, and because you're a subscriber, we are automatically going to move you into another performance with our compliments. Okay, so that sounds like a little bit of work. That's why I'm like, don't hate me. But she's like, it's worth it, because if we can get those people, people miss performances, and I don't know how much, maybe it's a couple people per show. Like, it's not like the volume is that high, probably, but to be able to contact those people and say, no, we want you to take advantage and maximize the value of that subscription, moving them into, it doesn't even matter what other show, like let them pick, it doesn't even matter, right? Like if we can just get them to consume the content we're putting out there, that's maximizing the value for them, they are more likely to renew. So when I do the mental math in my head, I'm like, fine, I would take that hit of making them a comp ticket for a different performance to make up for the one they lost, because if they renew that subscription, that is worth way more to our bottom line than that one show. So hopefully this is making sense, but help them maximize the value of the subscription, better onboarding, reinforce the wisdom of their decision. Those are the best ways I found that we can address the first year cliff.
Awesome. I think what's really interesting in everything that you just mentioned is how important it is to be able to see that data as it happens, as opposed to pulling it at the end of a season, for example, right? I think oftentimes we get so boggled down in our day-to-day that you forget about how important it is to be proactive as opposed to reactive at the end. And so having access to your CRM data, or having access to be able to see who those first-time subscribers were that missed out on these shows, and how important it is for you to be able to pull that information so you can get in front of them quicker, instead of waiting till that experience is already tanked at this point and it's much harder to bring them back in. So I think that's really interesting how, yes, it does sound like you're suggesting more work, but ultimately it helps maybe lessen the workload at the end of the year.
Yes,
right?
Precisely. Yes.
Oh, I see a lot of chatter happening right now, which is great.
I'm loving this. I'm literally screaming, why have I not thought of this? Thank you. Me too, all the time. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. I love this.
Another really important or a challenge that I often am hearing about from some of our clients, or just people in the space, as someone who works in marketing, is how do you get over feeling hesitant about bombarding your patrons with too many communications, right? So we already send them the welcome package, you already send them their membership, or maybe a list of what's happening this season. But then there's often people who feel a little hesitant because they feel like everyone's already getting so many emails from all over the place, from all the subscriptions they're at. So how do you get over that little hump?
That's a great question. There is a big difference in the kinds of communications we send. And when we talk about reason 3 in a little bit, the behavioral repetition, that really gets into types of communications even more. But for now, solicitation is different than customer service, right? These are two very different types of emails in our inbox. People don't like to be sold to. So when we're constantly upselling, that's what's the big turnoff and leading to delete, unsubscribe, don't renew, all those things we don't want. When it's customer service, it's not like we want to bombard them, but usually when it's reminding people how smart they are, reinforcing the wisdom of the decision, I'm pretty happy to receive that in my inbox, right? And if it's helping me maximize the value and the benefits, also pretty happy to receive that, because it's helping me feel like I'm getting my money's worth. And that keeps me renewing that subscription over and over. So I think the types of communications are very different.
Okay, yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. So in reason number 2, backward renewals, admittedly, I'm not completely versed in that space as many of the people in our chat are. Can you tell us a little bit more about the backward renewals and how incentivizing renewals add value to an institution as opposed to just giving away free stuff, which I think a lot of times we see people doing as a way to incentivize a renewal, is just giving things away. How do we do this differently?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. You say you don't know a lot, but I think you got it, Mathuja. Okay, so we already said earlier the backwards renewals are a thing. We like totally talked about it in the chat, right? So what do we do though to shift? Because I think that's where a lot of the challenge lies of like, if we've been doing it this way for so long, how do we do it differently? So, okay. The first thing, again, this is from the experts I've talked to, is give existing subscribers a choice. So this also goes with communication. If we're going to move to, I'm not saying we got to go to like your monthly subscription payment, but even just on the annual basis, say we're going to charge the card that's on file. So the first communication is something like saying, you know, we're moving to this model to help make it easier on you and easier on us on the back end. We're not going to try to like sugarcoat it. Like, we need to be honest about why we're doing this, but we can say also, we will always remind you before we charge your card on file. And for existing subscribers, you could give them a choice. If you prefer us to ask first every year, we can do that. So you can decide internally if you want to like allow people to be grandfathered into the old way or just make the decision sweeping across the board. You all can decide if you have the bandwidth to allow people to be grandfathered in, fine. They can do it the old school way, or maybe the next like 3 years you decide we can continue to do it for those people the old school way, and then we really are ripping the Band-Aid off and making everybody auto renewal, right? So you can decide internally what you want your process to be, but communicate, give people the choice. We're moving to this new system, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so the next thing is new subscribers and new donors, I should say, they don't get a choice. The new people who come in, they automatically get the auto renewal. Why? Industry standard, best practice. It is not going to be odd to them when we say, we'll give you a heads up before we charge your card, but we're going to charge your card next year with the card on file, right? Not going to seem weird to them. We're used to that, right? Okay. So the next thing is when people want to leave. So what do we do when somebody does want to unsubscribe? This is one of those things that it might sound counterintuitive or maybe not. You all can tell me. When somebody wants to leave, let them leave. Meaning, you can say it in the chat. Has this happened to you? There's some brand where you're like, it's time, I want to unsubscribe, I got to go. And it is so freaking difficult because you got to go through whatever web pages and rabbit hole or write an email or you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh my God, I hate that brand even more now because they made it so difficult for me to leave. Don't be that brand, right? Okay, so if somebody wants to leave, they want to end their subscription with us, yes, that's sad, or they want to end their donation with us, we've got them on the auto renewal process, but it's sad, but we got to let them go. Why? Because their mind's already made up. So when we block that or make it difficult or give them a bunch of hoops to jump through, it actually hurts the relationship even more. But if we make it easy for them to leave when they want to leave, we actually have a chance that maybe someday they'll come back. Okay, so those are things we can do to help implement this move to the auto renewals. And then I'll say one more thing on this, which is we have to incentivize the desired behavior. So we were talking about helping them maximize the benefits, reinforcing the wisdom of their decision. That's true for this switch to auto renewals too, or opt-out renewals, making them opt out. And what I mean by that is we can tell them, you know, the annual subscription fee is always cheaper than if you buy single tickets, right? It's going back to like using some of those selling points to reinforce the wisdom. It's always a better deal when you have a package, even if it's a 3 concert package or 3 show package, right? Always a better deal. So we want to be reminding them of those things to incentivize that behavior. So, okay, hopefully that answers the question of how do we start to address this phenomenon of the backwards renewals.
Yeah, absolutely. It got me thinking actually about my local art gallery out here in Toronto that I'm a member of. And my renewal is coming up in October, but they recently sent something out this month actually, which is quite a few months ahead of the renewal date. So I guess I'm curious to what you think about timelines in terms of even starting that renewal process earlier? Is there a particular time where you should start maybe pushing a little bit more heavily that incentive? For example, the email that landed in my inbox, and I think someone in the chat mentioned it, was just like a preview of what are the upcoming showcases happening in the next season, as a way to get me excited and to get me renewed a lot sooner than later. So is there a timeline here that people should be really thinking about? Is there something as too early? Is there as too late? What do you think?
I have a few thoughts kind of bobbling around in response to that. So let's see. One is, I don't have like a prescriptive timeline. Here's the formula, go. Because I don't think it's quite that straightforward, because it depends a lot on every organization's season and what programming's happening when and all of that. But what I will say not to do, because I have seen this happen multiple times at a past employer and a couple clients. So don't do this, what I'm about to say, which is, I've seen when there are package holders who like get their renewal almost when the package begins. So for example, you know, the new subscription campaign continues throughout much of the season, because you could be selling a very small package or a choose your own all the way, if your season runs in the fall or starts in the fall, all the way up through, you know, January or so, you could still be selling the current season. But then what happens? January, February, March, the new season's announced and you start trying to go for the renewals for next year. But there's some group of people that have had, you know, one performance in their package pass and then we're hitting them up for the renewal, or zero even. I saw this someplace where they, you know, they just run the report, they're a subscriber, it's time to renew. And it's like, oh my gosh, they haven't even had the first performance yet. So this is another thing in the category of like, yeah, I know it's more work to be like, okay, wait, if renewals are going out in February, who are our first years, only first years, because if they're long timers, again, they're more likely to stay with us. But who are the first years who need a little more TLC because it's just not the right time to hit them up yet? So I hope that helps a little, like sort of reconciling like what's the timeline. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to being proactive with what that overall experience looks like throughout that entire membership or subscription, as opposed to, again, just focusing in at the tail end of when these renewals are coming up. So your third point was behavior repetition. Loyalty takes time, right? It's one of those things, and I'm sure that's why the first year cliffs come in. Building that loyalty takes time, and you've talked about all these ways that we could probably work on in order to ensure that that loyalty is being built throughout that year. What are some strategies that you've seen work for some of the organizations that you have worked with or have been a part of that help drive this loyalty?
Yeah, so this idea of behavioral repetition is so important to everything we do. So we're talking about subscribers today, but it's important to everything. So if you followed my work, I'm not quite sure. I know we have some people who are familiar with me here. Some people maybe are newer to me here. But if you have followed my work, I've become known for developing what I call the long haul model. And that's exactly what that is behavioral repetition over time, no matter what segment you are, whether you're a first time attendee, ticket buyer, new subscriber, renewing subscriber, new multi-buyer, I skipped them, new donor, renewing donor, major donor, right? No matter where you are in the spectrum, or in my model, it's more of like a pyramid, whatever analogy or graphic you're using. The idea is no matter who you are, what is the next behavioral repetition step you can take? So let me zoom out and give a non-arts example. Tell me in the chat if you all remember treat receipts from Starbucks. This started in 2008, and treat receipts were, again, tell me if you remember this, but like if you went to Starbucks in the morning, yep, come back a second time. Good, you got it, Jeremy. So you come in the morning to Starbucks, you get your coffee, and I think if you bought a coffee and a pastry, then they would give you, love those receipts, Kate. Okay, good. They give you the treat receipt, and you get to come back like after 2 p.m., come back and I forget, save a bunch of money. I forget if you buy a coffee in the afternoon, but basically the incentive was come back the same day. You guys can tell me in the chat if I'm like forgetting the exact details of it. But the idea is that's behavioral repetition. What Starbucks did not do was say, you came in the morning, now do you want to buy your 10 latte punch card to come? No. They didn't do that. They said, just come back. Just come back and get another coffee. Behavioral repetition. Do the exact same thing. They didn't try to upsell. They didn't try to change the product. Just come back again. Just come back again, right? That's behavioral repetition. At Barnes & Noble, your book purchase is a coupon for the bakery with a receipt. Oh, that's cool. Coffee Addicts, How to Create Music Addicts by Aubrey. Yours truly. Okay, but that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is create addictions for our product. Oh my gosh, don't quote me on that. Okay. So Starbucks wanting to become people's third place. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a whole tangent we could go on there. But okay, treat receipts, behavioral repetition. So that's what we want to do at our organizations. And that's where we get, I think, pretty unfocused, to be honest. So when somebody comes for the first time, my whole long haul model is, what do we do just to get them to come back again? So for today's conversation, subscriptions, for a new subscriber, what's the closest behavioral repetition? Just renew the subscription, not add on a donation. No, that's not similar behavioral repetition yet. We will get to them for donations later. If we renew that subscription and then they're in for a second year, wow, their proclivity to donate, I'm getting very excited over here. Proclivity to donate skyrockets. So the reward will come, development folks, but on the subscriptions, if they're a new subscriber, just renew the subscription. Also, what not to do. You bought a 3-show choose your own package. Would you like to renew into a 12-week, 18-week fixed seat, whatever, full season? No. Closest behavioral repetition. Okay. Let me say very quickly, the reverse of that is also true. For the long-time subscribers, I'm never offering them something less. So if they are a long-time subscriber and they do have the full 18-week, whole song and dance, I'm not sending them the brochure for the 3-show choose your own. So both ways. But for the new subscriber here, closest behavioral repetition step is just renew the package. Same package. They can upsell themselves if they want. Like, we're not withholding additional options, but we're not really selling them on it. I hope this nuance is making sense here. Okay. So the idea is just repeat that behavior that's already familiar to them until a habit is formed. So when is a habit formed? We've kind of said this already, but just to make it crystal clear, when they're a second-year subscriber, that's a huge hurdle we have overcome. So that's when they are ready to start learning more about how could they support with a gift. And same thing on the donor side with the donation, first-year donation. If it's just renew the gift, or if we've done our jobs well on the moving to the auto renewal. Monthly giving is a whole other conversation that totally fits this. Oh my gosh, I'm like all on for monthly giving now. Anyways, I'm getting kind of all over the place, but the point is behavioral repetition. What's the closest next step we can ask them to take that's not a stretch? And if we keep it easy, keep it close to home for them, keep it familiar, the beauty of it is we capture the loyalty faster. They stay with us. Those renewal rates are higher, which then sets us up for the upgrade ask later, not that far later, 6 months, a year later, right? So if we can just have a little bit of discipline and strategy around that first year renewal, it pays off over the long haul. All right, I'm gonna calm down now. I really get excited about this stuff.
So keep it uncomplicated, keep it simple. Literally 2 words to the very detailed response, but I think that makes sense. I think that, again, it's easy to kind of get fixated on how do we get them coming back? What more can we throw at them? Like, keep throwing at them. But it's as simple as you want their subscription, get their subscription, and then focus on everything else as a next step, as opposed to it being this one big step that gets very complicated and confusing very quickly.
Yeah.
Awesome. There's a lot of great, I know you're chatting and you're talking us through all this great stuff, but it's really bringing up some great conversation in the chat over here as well, which is great to see. I'm like trying to read it at the same time, and I'm like, yes, great points, Daniel, Jeremy. Okay, so moving on, I know that I don't want to take up too much of your time because we want to leave it open to everyone here for any questions that they may have. So I'm going to open up the Q&A. I know we have one currently from Rebecca, who says that they have a lot of older patrons who are very suspicious of auto subscribe on credit cards, which is, yeah, very, very true. Any suggestion for how to work on them or work around that maybe?
Yes. So I just want to reiterate some of this that I said earlier, which is one, give them a choice. People need to feel like this is trust that we're asking them to have in our organization. So they need to feel like we're worthy of their trust. So we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's, regardless of their age, regardless of their longevity with us. We're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. That is very important in terms of like a vibe of our customer service and communications. So we tell them we're going to be moving to auto renewal, and you give them a choice. Like I said, you can decide what your organization has the bandwidth for. And you can even say, if you still want to make a seat request change, you'll still be first in line for that. Basically, just take the money. And then if they want to sit in a different section or upgrade or whatever, fine, you can charge the difference later. But the idea is just get that auto renewal going. So, but communicate that and tell them. And it's better to share more and be transparent than not. I tend to err on that side, and that's not just my opinion. That's what again, every expert I talked to in this space said. You really want to make the patron or customer feel like they know what's going on and they understand why. Okay, that said, if there are, again, not new people, they need to just be on the auto renewal, in my opinion, based on everything I've learned. But these long timers we're talking about, if they don't feel comfortable. If it was my organization, I would give them the choice. And like I said, maybe we decide as our internal migration to this, it would be, 3 years. They get grandfathered in for 3 years, and then we're doing it. Or you can decide to go forever, but that seems like a lot of work. So I think I would try to put an end date on that. But that's the idea. Give them a choice. And then remind them, we will always tell you before we charge your card. We will never surprise you. Again, it's developing that trust, that sense of, okay, I see what's happening. I trust this organization. So that's my advice on that.
Awesome. Andy has asked, a lot of their patrons pay with cash, which is obviously not renewable. Should they be pushing people to pay with credit cards?
Yes, for this reason and this strategy. I mean, here's the thing. We want to if somebody wants to give us money, I always say to my staff or clients I'm working with, find a way to take the money. So if they want to pay cash, fine. We accept that money. Of course we do. So, so it's not to make it difficult or anything like that for the customer, but this goes back to incentivizing the behavior. How could we make it, if you're saying a high percentage of patrons at your organization pay for their subscription with cash, then figure out how do we incentivize the credit card? I don't know, maybe there's some value added benefit, or maybe we're trying to streamline our processes. So if you give us a credit card, all the same things, we'll always tell you before we charge, no surprises, all that kind of stuff. But, I don't know, what's the incentive? Here's a wine voucher for your next performance, or the first performance in your package next season. Or I don't know, I'm just trying to think how do we incentivize the behavior? So that would be my recommendation there. They want to pay cash, fine, happy to take it. But if we can move them, nudge them toward what is more strategic for us, then that's what we want to do.
Catherine has asked something similar. How do you suggest handling patrons who religiously use checks for subscriptions and donors?
Yeah, same thing I just said. I think I would try to incentivize getting them on this system. And again, if they don't want to do it, fine. We are happy to accept their money, no matter what format they want to give it to us in. But we want to try to move them. Oh, and I will say one other thing on the giving side. Muhlenberg College, I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but that's kind of the whole point. It's not like they're a well-known higher ed institution with a giant giving alumni department, alumni giving department, and all this kind of stuff, they moved to low-level donor multi-year pledges. They found a way to like quickly do a DocuSign for like $50 over $50 a year for 5 years type thing. And they found a way to make that so easy for them to implement that they started getting these recurring gifts. So this is like this is like same song, different verse of this conversation, right? Of, okay, fine, maybe some donors didn't want to do it on their credit card, or maybe some of those were credit card, maybe some were check, but could you get them on a 5-year pledge, $50 a year? And then at least it makes the renewal a little easier for you still. They're still going to pay by check. You still got to invoice them or send them the renewal letter, that kind of thing. But at least they've committed to that. Is there a way to scale that up? Muhlenberg College figured out how to do it. So that's another kind of, like I said, another flavor of this that you could try.
And Lorenzo has asked, how do you scale this down for organizations such as orchestras that don't offer that many products, benefits, and have only a handful of concerts a year?
I think even for a smaller organization, I mean, I don't know what you all offer, but let's say, what do you offer? 4 different concert sets a year, 5 different concert sets a year? Anything more than 1 could be a subscription. You could do that. I mean, we would talk about this, actually, it's funny, back when I worked at the Seattle Opera, and this is true for a lot of opera companies, it's the same thing of what you're describing. Even they could be a massive company, but they don't have that much product. They have 5 or 6 productions a year, right? And you could be a major opera house and that be the case. And so we would always try to think about that too, of like, how do we get somebody? Could we do a 2 concert package, a 2 opera package, a 2 show package, whatever your artistic discipline? If you could do at least 3, I would say that, just because it moves inventory, which is what we need. But if you don't have the inventory, then do a two for whatever price, So that's my recommendation there. Oh, and then in terms of like secondary products like documentary and true crime, what's the equivalent of that if you don't have tons of product? You probably are doing some things already. Do you have the pre-concert talk? Do you have, if not, invent something. Now, I don't want to create tons more work, but it's like, is there something that would serve the audience? Could you do could the artistic director do, if he or she doesn't do a pre-performance talk, could they do, a video that you make before each concert and you want to distribute that to your patrons? I don't know. I'm just trying to think, what could we do that's not the biggest lift, but just gives those people one more way to connect with us? Because we know if we can do that, those renewal rates are higher.
Awesome. And from E. Hastings, what is the ideal time to open renewals up? We open renewals at the end of the season so we can catch patrons while they are at concerts, hype packages for the stage, and we also need renewals to begin at this time to help with cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Totally understand all of that. So as a general rule, and then asterisk, because I'm going to say something that breaks this a bit, but as a general rule, the longer you have to sell something, the more you will sell. So that's the general rule. So that means if you can go out earlier, have a longer renewal period, longer time to be selling new subscriptions, generally speaking, that is better. Now, my asterisk is it does get us, the earlier you go, it gets us into that scenario I described earlier, where you could have new subscribers who have only had 0 or 1 shows in their package take place, which then makes the renewal a little challenging because you need to handle them a bit differently. But if you have the bandwidth to sort that out, then I would say, yeah, go out as early as you can. And it also helps with cash flow. Totally understand. And all of this, I would say, the whole purpose of all of this is really cash flow and cash period, right? Recurring revenue. That is what the entire subscription economy is about. Recurring, predictable revenue. And then obviously the cash in the bank is like the main benefit too. But the more we do this better, the more we get to project out what our revenue is going to be. Who likes that? I hope every single person's hand is up wherever you're sitting right now. So the earlier you can go, the better. And then I just want to emphasize and underscore that what you're doing well is having some setup like at a physical performance, whether it's your final concert in the season or final show in the season, whatever. That's good. I think it's great to have a physical presence when you can. I am totally for doing as much of this virtually and the slick experience online, and we want all of that. But then also when people come, it's an event and there's energy and there's a vibe, and like we absolutely want to capitalize that on that in the moment. So I just really want to affirm what you're doing. It's adding an additional channel. They can subscribe online, they can renew online, they can renew by mail, they can renew in person at the performance.
Okay, I think we can get to 2 more questions before we have to wrap up. I would keep Aubrey here all day too if I could, but question from Kathy: our subscriptions are more money than typical streaming services such as Apple, storage, any type of newspaper. How do we help our subscribers stomach or feel comfortable with the large sum charged during auto renewals?
Yeah, that's a great question. Subscriptions, in some ways this is true for single tickets too, what I'm about to say, but for this conversation, for subscriptions, it's always a question of value. So we tend to get price conflated with value. So yes, what we offer is not cheap. We provide a very expensive product. It is not cheap to produce art, period, right? We know this very well. So what we need to convey to the customer is value. So how do we do that? That goes back to the benefits, reinforcing the wisdom of their decision. The annual price is cheaper than the per show single ticket price, right? All of those things. But it's also, that is very transactional. So don't just do only that. That's why it also goes back to all the benefits or the additional content types. Like if they start, and going back to that feeling of trust, like when they start feeling, wow, that organization is a place I trust. I know that no matter what is on stage or what's in the galleries, I know that I am going to learn something, that I am going to come away feeling like I've, I don't know, had a positive emotional experience, right? Like when we have these elements, like when we're selling a feeling and creating experiences that deliver these feelings, that makes the value proposition so much higher, right? So it becomes less about the dollars and cents to the customer and more about how they feel. And wow, that's going to outplay like the dollar sign figure any day. So this is not easy stuff, but the more we can help with feelings and conveying value, the easier that equation gets. And then one other thing, this is very tactical, to go back to the tactical, but could you do, this is not for everybody because it is really dependent on being organized with your CRM and box office, but could you do a multi-month payment plan or something like that where their card gets charged automatically over the next couple periods? That's, again, more work, more administrative work, but also an option for the people who really do say, high value all the way, I just can't do it in one lump sum, right? So I'll put that out there too.
And one more question from Catherine. How do you think about re-engaged subscribers? For example, people returning after a pandemic, do they behave like new subscribers?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question. In terms of data, we don't know because it's all so new and we're all living it right now. But what I'm thinking based on what we do know is that I feel like pretty much everything we've said can apply to not just new subscribers. Like, can we develop a great onboarding process for the people coming back? Sure, why not? Anything that, like, we're really talking about that first year cliff and how to overcome it. But so much of that communication absolutely could go to our second year, third year people, or the people who dropped off for a couple years and now we're seeing them back for the first time since 2020. Sure, why not? I mean, rolling out the welcome wagon, all those things we said about having people feel like they trust us, like they belong, like they're welcomed, it doesn't hurt to do to everybody. It helps the renewal rates for sure at the beginning, but why not do it with others? That's what's percolating for me as I'm thinking through that question.
Awesome. I know everyone has to run off to a next meeting, so I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much, Aubrey, for taking time to come on and chat with us all about subscription economies and how organizations can leverage this for their growth. I think the conversation has definitely been insightful. I've learned a lot. So for people who want to know more, I know there's still questions coming in. Where can they find you and how can they stay looped in on this upcoming book you have?
Thank you. Thank you, Mathuja, for saying all of that. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for being so active in the chat. So very quickly, as she said at the top, you are among the first to know I've got this book coming out. I haven't even posted it on social media yet. So that's how new it is. And I'm finally just able to start talking about it. So the URL is aubreybergauer.com/book. And you can learn more there. And then just so everybody knows, I'm going to send an email to all of you participating today that has a little more information as well. So just know it's coming. Thank you for dropping that URL in the chat. But yeah, thank you all. You are all just really wonderful. It makes this so much more fun when you're active. So I appreciate that.
And thank you all of us for joining us on this Thursday. Our next webinar series, the next webinar in this series, it focuses on fundraising and building a widely engaged community, and it features another great industry expert. This one is going to be on July 13th. Registration link will be in the chat, and for any additional information on upcoming webinars, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to not miss out. Thank you all again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.